Okay, I think we're ready to start. So good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Pekka Korpi. I'm the CEO of Qualdatrix. Qualdatrix is the name of the company that develops and sells a product called Data Content Manager. And if you've run into our website and if you've read our material, you probably know that Data Content Manager is a ServiceNow certified plugin to the platform that is used to improve data quality in ServiceNow. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that is really close to what we do with Data Content Manager and what a lot of our customers do. We're going to talk about how to set realistic data quality targets for CMDB. So let's get started with that. Just a couple of housekeeping things. We do have a Q&A option available for you in the Teams. You can probably find it somewhere in the top. So if at any point along the way you have any questions, please type your question into the Q&A section and we'll try to address it. If not during the presentation, then towards the end. And if for some reason we're not unable to answer your question in this call, then we'll get back to you after the call. And so this call is recorded and we are going to be sharing the recording afterwards. So with that, let's get started. Can I have the next slide, please? So the topic of the day is how to set realistic data quality targets for CMDB. And to familiarize ourselves with the topic, we're first going to be talking about what kind of targets are unrealistic. These are targets that we actually see quite a lot with our customers. So we think we have a pretty good familiarity with what's unrealistic and what's realistic. And once we've talked about that for a little bit, we're going to discuss how to make those targets a little bit more realistic. Then we're going to share a proven methodology, how to break things down to set more realistic targets. And then in the end, we're going to look at Data Content Manager for just a bit to see how you can put this in practice. So we're going to do a very, very brief DCM demo on the topics that we're going to discuss in the beginning. So next slide, please. Let's begin with what unrealistic data quality targets for CMDB look like. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mikko. Mikko, please.
Yes, so hello everybody. I'm Mikko Jola. I'm the DCM product owner at Qualdatrix. And working with basically all of our customers and kind of discussing the data quality targets and seeing how things are done on a day-to-day basis. So I took a couple of examples that we've seen in the last couple of years, like what I definitely consider unrealistic. And first thing is that you need to be fully aligned with CSDM. So we once had a client, or I think it was still like a demo session, where the CMDB owner said that he has a task to kind of deliver CSDM by the end of the year. So what does that mean really, and how do you measure that, and how do you even know where you are? So there's quite a lot of work in that, maybe a bit too much, especially for like one person or a team. So that's one thing. Another thing is being 100% compliant. That's again very difficult thing to achieve, and maybe you can accomplish that for a short while, but things change, world change, requirement change, so it's kind of hard to stay at the 100% level. And this is of course very much related to the scope, which is the third thing. So not every record is considered equal, and when setting the targets, you also need to kind of think about the scope. So if you combine all these three, like being fully compliant or 100% compliant with CSDM, including every possible record, I'd say that's a pretty unrealistic combination.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, is it? Yeah, I fully echo these. So we've heard the deliver the CSDM types of things over the years, I think more than once. And it's really, it depends so much on how you define CSDM to begin with. I mean, there's the guidelines from ServiceNow for sure, but not every company approaches it in the same kind of way. And that comes back to defining the targets to begin with. And 100% compliance, Yeah, it's a very momentary thing. Simply the fact that people come and go in your organization, that's going to affect your compliance over time. So even if you do nothing, you're still going to degrade your compliance over time. And scope includes every record. Well, I think most likely everybody on the call realizes that that's really unrealistic, especially if you're using discovery tools and you have a million records in your CMDB, which are populated automatically, which don't necessarily even exist from the CSDM point of view in reality.
Yeah, indeed. And as you said, we have kind of ways to do it differently and be more pragmatic. And that kind of brings us to this 5 steps model we've been kind of working with for several years, and that should improve your data quality as a whole or provide a methodology to improve data quality. But I think this is especially good for kind of setting the targets, because the targets need to be specific. They need to be kind of achievable. So to the person who gets the target needs to have the means to get it done and so on. So not being too vague and all that. So I was thinking let's look into this model in more detail, show you examples, show how DCM application is gonna support all this, and that's basically the remainder of the webinar. So
sounds good.
What are these 5 steps? I'll go through each of them in more detail, but everything starts by selecting a domain. So you apply these steps to one domain at a time. And what I mean by domain here is that if you think about the CSDM or CMDB, for example, one domain could be one CI class, like business application. And then you basically repeat these steps to all the classes that are in your scope of data management. So for the first step, you select the area you're working with. In the examples, I'm going to use business applications. So you select the area and then define the person or team who is responsible for that domain, and then you're done with first step. Then you need to figure out who is maintaining the data for you, so defining the providers. When you're done with that, you set up some minimum requirements for those providers, and then slowly move towards maybe the original target model and beyond. So let's go through each of these with some examples, and starting with the domain selection. If this is now an illustration of the CSDM 4.0 version, the 5 is coming, and there's like a lot more data there. So even more important to kind of break it down and do it in small steps. But if this is the kind of big picture for CSDM, I know quite many companies have this kind of target, that you need to reach the CSDM crawl phase compliance by, well, the end of the year or end of fiscal year. But how would you kind of break this target down using our methodology? So what is included in the crawl phase? It's basically the business application service. Then some might be using the SDLC component, and then you have some relationships to the infrastructure. So from this crawl phase, we would pick the first area to focus on. That would be the business application. And then for the business application domain as a whole, we would nominate a person or team to be responsible. So here I picked the enterprise architects. So they would be responsible for the application portfolio data in your ServiceNow. This is already something that you can put in to your ServiceNow or configure in DCM, that you define these domains and you define the responsibilities in the application. So it's documented there, and then we can utilize it later. So first step done. Moving to the next one, where we can identify the providers, and the domain owner and the provider differ in a way that the owner is responsible for kind of follow-up and monitoring the quality of all the records, and then providers take care of some of the records. So now we could have the application owners. You have a bunch of applications. They have different application owners, and maybe one owner has several applications to work with. And related to this data or this kind of definition, we can already create a blueprint in DCM, define the application owner to be the provider, start running audits, and make sure that all the records have a valid provider. And if we don't have the provider, then we would basically alert the domain owner so that they need to do something about these missing or invalid providers. And when you kind of reach this level, so this could be the first target, that every record you have in scope needs to have a data provider, unless you have quite a slim chance for success with the kind of other requirements. But when we reach certain level, let's say 90% of the records have providers, then we can start adding other requirements. So that would be the third step, defining the minimum requirements. And in my opinion, I think the minimum should really be minimum. Like, what is useful data that the people can fill in, doesn't take too much time, but kind of get things started and is already beneficial for like different processes and the next steps. So an example of this kind of minimum data could be that you kind of continue with the same blueprint, and then you, for example, say that you don't want to have duplicates, so you enable the duplicate checking, and then add something called field setup to include a few attributes like name and description, maybe business criticality, something that is already useful for incident management, for example. Again, this would be the next target, reach the minimum level, and then you can move over to the next, or well, yeah, before that, we can of course then use the provider information and notify the people if some details are missing and improve the data on this step. But then the next level would be the target model. And now we can go back to the original target. So we wanted to reach the crawl phase compliance. And in the CSDM model, it's a lot about the relationships. So basically it means that we have the applications or business applications related to the application services. And then when we are ready with that, we can move on to the next step, which basically never ends. So from this point on, you just continue refining the model, raising the bar, raising the maturity. But along the way, you are also setting targets, reaching targets, and then kind of moving forward when you're at the comfortable level. And next, I thought about kind of showing these to you in the actual instance. But anything you want to add, Pekka?
Yeah, I was just so to me it seems like basically what you're saying is that even though ServiceNow says that crawl, walk, run, and fly are like logical steps as they are, but you want to break that down further. So even in the crawl stage, you're saying basically that the crawl is actually quite big. So let's say you have 1,000 or 10,000 business applications, just managing those, getting those into the crawl phase alone is quite a big task. And you're using this model now to sort of apply like the minimum steps or the baby steps to get started. And then you grow as you mature instead of targeting the entire crawl phase at once. Is that basically what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying. And I picked the business application domain on purpose because that's a good example of an area where you need to have a lot of people involved. So
right, that's true.
You might have, I don't know, 1,000 or from 1,000 to 5,000 business applications. So the number of records is not like overwhelming, but with those, let's say 3,000 business applications, you can easily have 800 people responsible for them. So
right.
how do you communicate to all those 800 people that they should do something, and what is it that they need to do? So that's why you want to start small and get these people involved, see that there is some progress, and then you can kind of speed up and add more requirements when the process is working.
Yeah, and of course, I guess you want to know that all those business applications actually have an owner, which is a problem to begin with if you don't even know. So that's,
Yeah.
I guess, the first step that you're talking about there.
Yes, exactly. And what you said about the crawl already being kind of big target. So this way you would first do this for the business application, then next for application service, then maybe for servers, and maybe you don't even include the SDLC component. And when you kind of define all these, then you can also show the reports out of these areas that where you are and what's gonna maybe happen next and so on. So it's easy for the management also to kind of follow up and understand where you are and what kind of problems or challenges you currently facing.
Right. Okay.
So let's get to it. The end result should be something like this. So we can see the trends or progress for these different steps. And basically, when you reach certain point, then you can start adding more audits or more blueprints into it. So let's see. I hope my instance is still alive. So there's the audit dashboard. So this is the place where we can follow up on the results on a high level. And here I have just one trend line. It should be based on one blueprint. So this is now one blueprint that is checking the data provider information. And I have it, oh, let's move the Teams bar. I have it here. So very, very simple blueprint. We're just checking that every business application has an application owner and the managed by group. So hopefully there is also like a team helping the owner to fill in all the details. And the first audit would simply focus on these two references and making sure that every active business application has an active owner and an active support group. And this would be the end result. So over 5 weeks in my demo environment, things are kind of progressing nicely, and we have already reached 94% compliance on this particular audit. So we could easily go to the next step, create another blueprint. It looks the same, but it's a little bit different. So inside this business application class, we have additional requirements. This icon here means that the duplicate checking is enabled. So we're looking for duplicate business applications. And then this one here is the field setup. So in addition to those two references, we're also making sure that every application has a name and description and business criticality, architecture type. And these attributes are again selected on purpose because business criticality can be very important for incident management or change management. And maybe you have some requirements later on that are dependent on this value. Same thing with the architecture type. Depending on what kind of business application it is, on later stages, your requirements might be different for different types of applications. But something quite easy and simple to get started. And then by running audits against this blueprint, you would see more data on the dashboard. So let me try to quickly show that. Just a second. So now I have more audit results here. So let's refresh and look at the results per blueprint. So now there's two trend lines. So this one is based on the minimum requirements when we already know the providers, and the upper one is only checking for the provider information. So these are getting close. There's like 82% on the minimum data. So maybe now would be a good time to look at the original target, which was the kind of crawl phase business application data. So let's go and create a blueprint for that. That would be our third step or fourth step. So as many of you hopefully knows, we provide these templates for the common service data model, and then you can pick your starting point. So I will take the business application crawl model, and let's call this now five step, and this is now step 4, target model, and then create. So now we get the CI relationships. Again, let's say we don't use the SDLC component, so I remove that. But we want to make sure that the responsibilities are in place, and according to CSDM, we need to have this relationship. So now we can publish this and run another audit. Well, here we define the responsibilities. So in step 2, we define the providers. We said that it should be the application owner. So this is where we kind of put that into the blueprint. Managed by group can help. And then let's remove that. So we see the ones which don't have it and publish. And now if I go to the audit module and run an audit with that new blueprint, that would represent the kind of target model. So I'll do it on demand and select this 5-step category. So I have 150 roughly. So it will take maybe a minute or two to kind of complete the audit. And then we should see a new trend line here that represents the 4th step. And now I'm creating now separate blueprints for each step, but in reality or in practice, I would assume that you create the first one, then when you reach the proper target level, then you kind of extend the existing blueprint, kind of add the requirements there, and then kind of continue running audits with that one. But having it on separate blueprints gives you the benefit of kind of making sure that the provider information is like very close to 100%, if not 100, and always act immediately if that audit raises any issues, and then maybe be more relaxed with the more demanding audits.
So basically what I'm seeing here is the blueprint contains all the requirements for the data, right? So
yeah,
that's the starting point, and basically everything else follows. So if you run an audit against that blueprint, you get all the results, and you get very many details that we haven't actually looked at. But basically the blueprint is the only thing that you have to do to get these results. And there's actually a question from Scott. Does the system email the provider to update their application? And the answer is yes, right?
Yes, if you want to. So by default, it doesn't send any notifications to anyone. But because this is in ServiceNow, it's part of your ServiceNow instance, we can easily configure notifications and send to the responsible persons. And
Right.
we have a good ways of doing that. And for the application owners, we also have like a workspace, so we can guide them to the workspace and fix the issues there. But I guess that would be a topic for another webinar.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, the audit is now complete. So let's look at the trend first. If I just refresh this and change it to blueprints. So now we see the third line. This is based on the target model. 81%, it's not bad. So that's good start for the target. And then if you want to see the results in more detail, then you can, of course, look into the audit results view. And this basically means that 43 or 29% of those business applications have some critical issues or critical deviations against the blueprint. And if you want to understand the kind of different parts of the blueprint, you can change the view and see here that the application owner data is actually in very good shape. Quite a many applications without the support group and managed by group. So these would be maybe the first things to focus on. And if we think about this 5-step model, then when you reach the appropriate level, then you can again create another version of the blueprint and maybe add requirements related to service offerings or the kind of walk phase of the CSDM model. But
so basically, you're able to extend the blueprints as you go, or create new ones if necessary. And I think you can also have separate blueprints for the same data. If, for example, there's different people responsible for different parts of that data.
Yeah. And even these were now like separate blueprints, but you are right that you could kind of split the requirements into different blueprints, even though we're talking about business application data, and then each of the individuals will get like personal and specific metrics and targets that you can really kind of work on.
Right.
And I think if that's enough for the demo now, so if you want to see more or see how this works in your environment, of course you're free to contact us. But before closing this call, I'd like to kind of recap on the key takeaways. So this is almost the same as I said on the unrealistic target slide, but aligning with CSDM is a good target, but you need to do it in small steps. So split the model into smaller entities or smaller areas, and then try to align with those. And I think the whole CSDM alignment should follow the idea of like, how do you use ServiceNow and what you try to accomplish with ServiceNow, and then the CSDM will kind of support that. So the targets basically come from the use cases, and then you should align with CSDM whenever you can. But split it up, then the 100%, maybe that is a good target if you have a limited scope, or if you look at the targets on a personal level. So if you are responsible for 5 business applications and you have reasonable requirements, then I think it's okay to aim for 100%, that your details are correct. But then when you look at the target for all your business applications, maybe you'll never reach 100% because things change, and that might seem kind of unmotivating even. But for like another way to kind of set the scope is, of course, saying that let's aim 100% for our critical business applications, and then for the less critical applications, maybe 90% is enough. So be specific. And the last takeaway or suggestion is to celebrate success, because that motivates people. It's nice to see that you are able to reach the targets and you can set new targets. So let everybody know that, okay, now we have 85 or 95% of our records owned by somebody, and we can actually kind of continue our work from here. And we are now working with CSDM and kind of ready with 5 different domains, and plan to continue with 3 more next quarter. But all in
Yeah, and
all,
I think
being
that's
specific helps.
Yeah, and I want to say to celebrate success is something that surprisingly few companies do in a very structured manner. And having the results on different levels for people personally, for teams, for different stakeholders, that allows for a lot of flexibility in creating those targets, and celebrating meeting those targets becomes easier. It's not the CMDB has to be entirely up to date. You can still celebrate your mini successes that you hopefully have along the way. And I think that goes a long way in motivating people to do their part.
Indeed.
We are approaching the end of our time here, unfortunately. Does anybody have any last minute questions before we end the webinar? I guess not. We are then at the end. If you have any questions for us afterwards, feel free to get in touch with us. If you would like to look at DCM in more detail, you can book a session with us using the QR code displayed here, or just go to our website and book a time with us. I'll be happy to talk to you about DCM and show you a very detailed and personalized demo. And with that, thank you very much for joining, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk again soon. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.